Hey, what's up everyone? Welcome to another Level Up with Aaron video. Today I want to give you guys a few base design tips. This is kind of like a general introduction for people on houses and how they work, as well as some tips for designing a more effective base. I'm going to make it more kind of geared towards a lower level or less experienced players. Obviously everybody, by the time they get to the level 70s and 80s and all that, they should be familiar with kind of how base design works. I'm going to start off by real quickly going through each of the houses, the colors, etc., and telling you what they're good for. And then I will go into my alliance here and kind of look at a few low level bases and give some general tips and feedback on what I see a lot of lower level players maybe making mistakes doing, etc. So let's go. The first house we're going to look at, I'll kind of go in order of my temples here, is the purple house. This is the Zeus house. This house is a general buff house, so it increases the health, attack, damage, and range of any adjacent building and their spawn troops. So as you can see, I have some archery ranges around here because it buffs their range, it buffs the health of the troops as well as the health of the building, and it buffs what was it? Their damage done as well. So that's definitely a good use. You don't want to put academies by purple as often just because you're not utilizing them to their full potential. But it's a good all around general bonus house. It only does 7% bonus at level 15, which is good, but it's not great. You compare that to like something like the Athena house, which the bonus at level 15 is 25%. So that's a pretty significant increase, but it's only one dimensional. So I'll go show you what Athena houses are good for. They buff the health of all the adjacent buildings and their spawn troops. So these are good for anything pretty much. They're good for temples, they're good for any defensive buildings. It's just a general all around good thing to have more health on your buildings. And of course it buffs the troops that come out of the buildings as well, so it works great for all your spawners, whether they're green or whether they're archeries or whether they're academies. So that's a great general health buff for anything in the game. So definitely utilize a lot of blue houses if you have them. The next house I'm going to talk about is the Ares house. So this increases the damage from adjacent towers and spawn troops. So this is a good house to put around monuments, good around defensive towers, as well as good around academies and archeries. It's going to increase the damage done by the troops that are spawned or damage done by the building it's next to. Not really great for temples, but I'm buffing the other things and I'm not too worried about putting another house here, so it works good for me right there in that case. But red houses are good for doing damage to the gods when they're attacking you, so pretty much use them around any damage dealing building. The next house is the green house. So all this house does is increases the range of the adjacent buildings. So you don't want to use greenhouses next to academies because academies spawn melee troops and they're not going to get any bonus from the greenhouse. So you can see around my greenhouses I have buildings, and now like take this Archimedes tower, or let me give you something that's got a significant range. So I've got 5 houses around this, and you can see how big its range is. Now if I take it out over here and look at how small the range shrunk down because it's not getting that buff from all those houses. So green is definitely great for buffing range damage buildings, be them monuments or be other defensive buildings. Next we have Hera houses. Hera House, what they do is they increase or inflict explosion damage to any buildings that they're touching. So when you kill this building, when you kill this temple, this Hera house is going to give explosion damage to that temple. And any gods that are in melee range, when this temple explodes, are going to take damage. So this is kind of like a great house for being an anti-Ares charge, because as soon as Ares charges in this and he kills it, he's going to take a significant amount of damage, and I've surrounded this with all high level Hera houses, so pretty much any Ares is going to die as soon as they charge this. Hera houses are not good for low level players because to be really effective you need to have a lot of them, and I generally find that you're a lot better off buffing either the health or the damage or the range of a building in general rather than the white. You're just hoping to inflict damage, and since it only affects melee or the melee gods, then half the gods it doesn't even do damage to, so definitely not a good low level house to utilize. Next is Hades, and Hades has Hades houses, and these houses give a reanimation chance to the troops from any adjacent building. So the reanimation chance of 40%. So in this case I put them by my Ares monument. So there's a 40% chance that when these Ares troops are killed, they will resurrect as skeletons. So with two houses plus the temple gives me 25%. Basically, with the two houses and the temple here, the Ares troops should theoretically have a 100% resurrection chance. So these houses are good for any of your troop buildings, so any of your spawners, so your archeries, your academies, or any of the monuments that spawn troops, the Hades houses will buff those. The next house is the Aphrodite House. This house buffs the damage and health of troops spawned from adjacent academy or archeries. There is no benefit to adjacent towers, so don't use these for towers. They only buff spawners, so buildings that produce troops. So obviously you want to surround pink houses with buildings that spawn. And then the cool thing about houses is when you click on them, you can see what buildings they buff. So like I click on this red house and you see that what lights up, the Ares, the flamethrower, and the Athena monument all light up when I click on this house. So that kind of is a good little reminder of, hey, this will tell you if your house is actually working where you want it to work. Even sometimes when you misalign buildings and there's like a gap and you don't know it, it's a good check too. You're like, okay, all right, look at this Archimedes tower is not lighting up because it's not touching. So now I move it over here, and then okay, I can see it right. So that's another kind of little tip for you guys to make sure that your houses are properly placed so you can see if they're effectively boosting the buildings you want them to boost. The final temple is the Apollo temple, and his houses provide a healing effect. So anytime any building takes damage, it's going to heal at 2.4%. So it's going to give the building regeneration abilities. So definitely, especially at low levels, can be a very effective house because the damage output from low level attackers might not be able to keep up with the healing effect. But let me go look at some low level bases now. I touched on all the houses. Generally, I'll give you a few tips. Like for temples, yellow houses are good and blue houses are good for temples. Purple houses are okay for temples, or not great. And then for damage dealing buildings, you want to put red or green houses because they're either going to buff their range or they're going to buff their damage. Purple houses are okay. Once again, they're the general all around. They're not great at anything, but they're like the jack of all trade. And then for your troop spawners, you want to generally put them, you can put blue or pink. Those are the top two, probably most popular and effective combos. Red is also great for troops because it buffs their damage, and then green for archeries. You can give the archers more range. So those are kind of some quick tips on the effective use of houses. Now I'm going to spend a couple minutes looking at some lower level players and kind of analyzing their base and pointing out some stuff for you guys to pick up and some feedback on them. So let me start with linebacker here, level 33. The low level guys, at this point you've got like 2 temples and you're really just getting started, so there's not much to look at. Let's check out Lions base. Okay, he's got 3 temples. He has them spread out, which is a great idea at low levels. That way, when the attacker attacks, you don't want your all your temples to be right next to each other, because then they can just wipe you out real quick. So he's got 2 temples together and then 1 temple spaced apart. He has 2 of the better monuments for low levels because they spawn troops, so good job there. I don't love his use of houses. I'd rather see him move these houses internally. That way they'd be buffing more buildings. Generally, I try to put houses so they're surrounded by other buildings. That way you're getting the most out of them. Because right now he's buffing these 2 buildings, but there's more buildings over here in the grass that he could have been buffing too. And for the monuments, I'd actually like them to see him move these Aphrodite houses to buff these 2 monuments, because these are going to be his 2 biggest damage dealers for attackers when um, they're attacking his base. These are going to be the biggest nuisances. They're going to be the spawners that are coming out of here. So I'd like to see him move and buff these 2 monuments with some nice pink houses. I think they'd be a lot more effective, and then definitely maybe a couple of these houses, rearrange it so you're buffing more than one building with a house. You don't really want to buff one building with a house, like is the case in this pink house. It's just buffing this one building. So maybe you move it over here where the flame tower is at, and then you're going to buff both these spawners. You get the idea. And generally, you want your especially at low levels, you do want the middle of your base where the attackers are coming in to be getting hit by targets. You got your short range buildings when they're in close to temples, and you have your long range buildings when they're running around the perimeter. I won't get too much detail here. Just wanted to focus mostly on houses in this video. So yeah, definitely can use these houses more effectively by doing some rearranging here. Let me go look at 1 or 2 other bases for you guys real quick. So let's go check out G20's level 44. So spent some more resources and has upgraded some buildings nicely, which is great. I do think he needs a lot more houses. Houses, like I said, they're great for buffing everything, so you definitely don't want to underestimate the effectiveness of houses. These white houses, I think they're kind of a waste. That he'd be better off using blue or purple houses in most of these cases. And then, as a general rule of thumb, you never want to put decorations internal in your base, because if the attacker has help, the attacker's help can just zap these decorations, and then now you have open holes for somebody to easily drop in a Hera and blow up the middle of your base. So try to move the decorations out to the perimeter of the base if you want to use them, and try to keep it filled with houses and defensive buildings internally here. But nice square design spread out, so looks good. Just maybe add a few more houses in here. Definitely get rid of the decorations, and then I'm not a big fan of the Hera houses for low levels. I don't think they're as effective, and you'd be better off putting in another house in its place. Okay, and let's see, I'll go check out one more house, just one more base, just for some more feedback here. We'll check out Sean Mack. Okay, great. He's got a ton of houses in here. As you buy houses, obviously, just like everything in the game, the cost scales up. So you don't want to get too crazy on buying any one type of building, be it one, buy too many fire towers, because the cost goes through the roof. It's a good idea to kind of have a balance, and that's the way I think the developers wanted it, and that's the way the defensive kind of scale, so your costs will be more, you get a better return on your investment if you kind of balance everything out and you don't get too heavy on houses or too heavy on one type of defensive building. Here I'm going to pick on Sean. He's got one of my pet peeves, and that's double stacking houses. This is not a great use of houses because you're buffing other houses with the houses, and you don't want to do that. So you could definitely utilize the houses better somewhere else, or even bring defensive buildings like these 2 buildings in and replace a house or 2 here. And like I said, just don't have double houses because it's a waste of the house. And then also, when you can, obviously try to utilize houses with buildings, around them. So, once he's buffing the decorations here, and you can't buff decorations, they don't do anything. So maybe pull some of these defensive buildings or rearrange your houses so that way you're not double stacking them, and maybe you're buffing some more of these defensive buildings. But he's got good centralization and also spread of his temples, so that looks great. And then his damage dealers and his troop buffers are right here. And then he has his Ares Tempe way out here. I'd like to see maybe a little bit closer. It does have a big range. It's covering most of his base, so it's pretty effective. But anyways, well, I'm gonna wrap the video up now for you guys. If you have any other questions, please don't hesitate to contact me. I'm in the forums, the Gods of Olympus forums, as well as we have a Line chat. You download the Line app, and we have a Google Gods of Olympus global chat, as well as my alliance maintains a Line chat. You can hit me up on there for feedback or tips, etc., or post some comments in the video below. Be happy to check out your base and give you some feedback on it and hopefully help you out. So thanks for tuning in. Keep leveling up.